The story starts with Jiwon, a high school student, protesting against the unjust firing of her teacher. Shortly after, her classmate Kijun shows up, warning her about impending rain, but she dismisses his concern. Jiwon and Kijun, once close childhood friends, now often bicker. During gym class, Kijun tries to impress his crush, Soyoung, with his athletic skills. He eagerly attempts a jump, but is startled by some taekwondo students approaching, causing him to fall and be laughed at by his peers. Kijun, who used to practice taekwondo until an ankle injury sidelined him, now lacks the confidence to return, even though his ankle is healed. After school, Kijun visits the grave of his friend Min, placing a flower and telling him he quit taekwondo. As Kijun leaves, another boy, Youngju, arrives at the grave with flowers, but they do not meet. The next day, a new transfer student joins their class. It's Youngju. Kijun tries to talk to him, but Youngju angrily calls him a murderer. Later, the students gossip about Youngju, saying he was involved with gangsters. This rumor scares Jiwon, leading her to accidentally spill glue on a chair. To her horror, Youngju sits on the glue, but is too timid to warn him. When he eventually stands, his pants rip, and he spends the day embarrassed. At her burger joint job, Jiwon is surprised to see Kijun, who has been hired to replace her as she's starting an internship. She is tasked with training him. At home, Jiwon's mother scolds her for working at the burger joint and mocks her carpentry passion, making Jiwon upset. She tries to distract herself at a claw machine, but ends up crying when she fails to win a toy. Youngju, who maintains the claw machines, sees her and gives her a teddy bear, cheering her up. The next evening, Jiwon helps Kijun at the burger joint, demonstrating her cooking skills. Noticing a wound on her elbow, Kijun bandages it, reminiscing about a childhood memory when he treated her wound, and she kissed him. Jiwon begins her internship, but soon becomes frustrated with meaningless tasks. She complains to her manager, who scolds her and tells her to comply. Upset, Jiwon posts a rant about her manager on social media. The next day, her teachers demand she delete the post, but she refuses and decides not to return to the internship. Jiwon and her friends gossip about Youngju at a restaurant, only to find out he works there. Kijun and his friends also arrive, angering Youngju, who is stopped by his brother Jong from causing a scene. Jiwon starts a new part-time job at a supermarket, where she encounters Youngju again. They chat over noodles, and she explains she left her internship due to a toxic manager. When she asks Youngju why he hates Kijun, he remains silent, prompting her to apologize for prying. The next day in the library, Kijun sees Soyoung being harassed and tries to intervene, but she brushes him off. Later, he finds an anonymous letter in his locker stating, "I ate pasta today," a phrase associated with suicidal thoughts. Worried, he rushes to Jiwon's house, thinking she might be in danger. She denies writing the letter, pointing out that anyone could have known the phrase. They then speculate that the letter's author might have a crush on Kijun, as it was left for him. The next day at school, they ask many girls if they like him, but all of them say no. They also try to talk to their teachers, but they are all busy preparing for the visit from their school director, Go. Shortly after, Jiwon goes to the locker room to get her stuff. There, she sees her friend Minseo's locker, which has the same symbol as the letter. She remembers that Minseo used to work with her as an intern and had been acting strange lately. Just then, something falls from the rooftop, startling everyone. They find out that a flower pot fell from the roof and damaged director Go's car. Youngju, who dislikes the director, threw the pot on purpose. Soyoung, who was studying on the roof, saw this and suddenly asks him to date her, but he ignores her. Jiwon thinks Minseo has jumped off the rooftop, but is relieved to find out it was just a flower pot. She tells Kijun that the suicide note could be from Minseo, and they start looking for her. Director Go finds her car destroyed and leaves in another car, ordering the teachers to find the culprit. Jiwon calls Minseo's workplace and learns that she hasn't shown up for a few days. Youngju sees Minseo on the beach, but doesn't think much of it. Later, he remembers Jiwon talking about the suicide note and calls her to tell her he saw Minseo near the beach. Jiwon asks him to find her. In the next scene, Minseo is on a bridge, thinking about jumping into the ocean. A few days ago, she accidentally broke an artifact while working, and her manager demanded 30 million won from her. Feeling trapped, she considers suicide. Before she can do anything, Youngju arrives and stops her. He comforts her, saying there are people who care about her. Jiwon arrives with Kijun and a teacher. They hug, and Minseo explains her situation. The teacher promises to talk to the manager. The next day at school, Director Go is still upset about her car. Soyoung sends Youngju a video of him throwing the flower pot and threatens to expose him unless he pretends to be her boyfriend. He reluctantly agrees. The next day, news spreads that they are a couple. Soyoung shares pictures on social media, and they show up at school holding hands. Meanwhile, officials are still looking for the person who threw the flower pot. The head teacher finds a key ring on the rooftop and asks who it belongs to. Kijun knows it belongs to Yongju but claims it as his. The teacher expels Kijun, and the news spreads throughout the school. That night, Yongju asks Kijun why he's taking the blame, but Kijun stays silent. Yongju decides to confess the next day. He recalls how Director Go refused to help his paralyzed brother, Jung, after he got hurt while working for her. Yongju texts Soyoung that he's going to tell the truth about the flower pot. The next day, Yongju goes to the principal's office to confess, but finds another student claiming she accidentally knocked over the flower pot. Since she is Director Go's niece, she is excused. Yongju tries to intervene but is stopped by Soyoung, who threatens him. The next day, the students go on a field trip where they are entertained by a dancing panda, who turns out to be their classmate Yuna. She didn't make it through the final rounds of a K-pop group audition and leaves in embarrassment. That evening, Yuna approaches Soyoung in tears, asking for advice. Soyoung tells her to accept it and move on, which upsets Yuna. The following day at school, Yuna is ridiculed by her classmates. Soyoung evaluates her homework and points out her mistakes. Yuna angrily reveals Soyoung's orphan background, which backfires, resulting in more ridicule for Yuna. Soyoung gets many calls from Yuna's mom. She finds Yuna crying alone at an amusement park. They used to be close friends, but had a fight. Soyoung tells her they can't change the past. They must move forward. They apologize and make up. Soyoung then goes back to the orphanage and sees a photo of Yongju with the kids. She remembers meeting him there 2 months ago when he volunteered. The next day, Kijun's friend teases him about Jiwon being his first love. Jiwon overhears and blushes. She remembers kissing Kijun as a child and rushes to his house to confess her feelings. She arrives and says she wants to start over. Kijun's grandfather shows up, so Jiwon says she's there to learn carpentry. They start woodworking together. Later, Kijun's grandfather falls ill, and Kijun rushes him to the hospital. Jiwon goes to his house and finds it empty. At the hospital, the doctor says his grandfather is okay. Kijun learns they might lose their home due to financial problems. Jiwon rushes to the hospital to comfort Kijun. The next day, Kijun almost hurts Jiwon with a tool. Soyoung gives Yongju a gift for his birthday. Yongju asks when her birthday is, but she doesn't know because she's an orphan. Jung struggles to buy a gift for his brother. Yongju receives chocolates from Jiwon and texts her a thank you. Jiwon scolds Kijun for not sharing their housing situation earlier. She offers her spare flat, but Kijun refuses. Yongju talks to Jiwon at school, and they discuss his text from the night before. Grandpa is discharged from the hospital and tells Kijun they have a new place to live without a deposit. Kijun is shocked to learn they're moving in with Jiwon. Jiwon apologizes for not telling him sooner. They decide to go to school separately to avoid suspicion. Yongju sees them and feels jealous. At school, they prepare for a carpentry competition. Soyoung and Yongju, Jiwon and Kijun, and the director's niece and nephew form teams. Yuna gives Soyoung candy to boost her confidence for the competition. Kijun is nervous about their financial problems. The next day, they compete in the carpentry competition. Soyoung and Yongju's teams build great benches, but the director's niece and nephew's bench breaks. Despite this, they win first place because of the director's influence. Jiwon is upset they didn't win. Yongju cheers her up, and they take the bench home together. Jiwon musters the courage to confess to Yongju about accidentally gluing him to his seat, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. To her surprise, Yongju's initial shock gives way to forgiveness when she sweetly apologizes. Despite his willingness to assist with the bench, Jiwon politely declines, assuring him that her father will lend a helping hand. As Yongju departs, a sudden urge to convey something compels him to return, only to be met with the unexpected sight of Kijun, who opens the door at that precise moment, prompting startled gazes exchanged between the two young men. Jiwon approaches Yongju the next day, divulging the living arrangements involving Kijun, to which Yongju responds with a nonchalant reassurance. Invigorated by the opportunity presented by a project offer, Yongju extends an invitation to Jiwon, who eagerly accepts, already envisioning the collaborative effort. Their conversation is interrupted by Kijun's earnest plea to join the project, met with a public refusal by Yongju, leaving Kijun feeling acutely embarrassed amidst stifled snickers from their peers. Soyoung, intrigued by Yongju's apparent animosity toward Kijun, probes delicately during a casual chat. Her curiosity piqued. Their impromptu gathering for a meal fosters a lighthearted ambience until Yongju's mother jestingly teases Jiwon, inadvertently revealing Yongju's fondness for the chocolates she gifted him. Much to Soyoung's chagrin, Jiwon's earnest request to include Kijun in their project meets a firm rebuttal from Yongju, leaving Jiwon momentarily disheartened. On a day designated for a visit to a traditional Korean dwelling, Jiwon's enthusiasm is momentarily dampened by an injury sustained while searching for a measuring tape. Her mother's reproachful words incite a rare display of defiance from Jiwon, who storms out of the house in frustration, leaving a palpable tension lingering behind. Observing the encounter from a distance, Kijun is moved by Jiwon's emotional turmoil, prompting him to offer a small gesture of comfort in the form of a measuring tape, symbolizing solidarity in their shared passion for carpentry. Their subsequent excursion unfolds amidst laughter and shared moments, culminating in a serene tableau as Jiwon rests her weary head upon Kijun's shoulder during their journey home, a silent acknowledgement of the burgeoning bond between them. Director Go's suspicions regarding Soyoung's involvement in a fabricated confession spur a clandestine investigation, revealing a familial connection between Youngju and Jong, a former colleague. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Director Go summons Youngju, her steely resolve undeterred by his taciturn demeanor. Their terse exchange sets the stage for a dramatic confrontation, threatening to upend the fragile equilibrium of their academic environment. Meanwhile, Youngju's chance encounter with Min's mother unveils a surprising revelation: Kijun's clandestine acts of compassion toward Min's family, shattering Youngju's preconceived notions and sparking a cascade of introspection. As tensions escalate on the anniversary of Min's untimely passing, Youngju finds himself ensnared in a tempest of conflicting emotions, grappling with unresolved grievances from their shared past. The subsequent school day unfolds with visible signs of physical altercation evident on the countenances of both Youngju and Kijun, eliciting murmurs of surprise among their peers. Later, during carpentry class, a palpable sense of urgency permeates the atmosphere as the teacher voices concern over the absence of one more member required for their collaborative project. However, the arrival of Kijun, expressing a newfound eagerness to participate, meets with a surprising lack of objection from Youngju this time. As the day draws to a close, Youngju seizes the opportunity to inquire of Jiwon whether she utilizes the bench she crafted. Jiwon, in response, discloses that she has placed it atop the rooftop, where she can savor the spectacle of the sunset. Prompted by curiosity, Youngju accepts her invitation to witness this firsthand, leading them to Jiwon's residence where they share a poignant moment admiring the sunset, during which Youngju's affectionate gaze belies the realization that he has developed feelings for her. The subsequent day finds Jiwon's familial absence granting her a rare solitude, which she resolves to utilize for honing her carpentry skills. However, upon returning home from school, she discovers the misplacement of her keys, prompting a call to her mother for guidance, who advises her to seek refuge at Kijun's domicile for the night. With no alternative recourse, Jiwon acquiesces, only to find Kijun similarly unaccompanied, courtesy of Grandpa's nocturnal shift. Seizing the opportunity to delve into their project presentation, their efforts culminate in an unforeseen state of fatigue, precipitating an impromptu slumber shared at the desk. The subsequent morning finds Kijun rousing early, only to be confronted with the oversight of his USB drive, indispensable for his presentation. Resorting to a hasty call to Jiwon, he beseeches her to retrieve it, thereby catalyzing an inadvertent discovery of sentimental tokens from their shared past amidst his possessions. Emotions stirred, Jiwon is propelled to confront Kijun with her long-standing affection, albeit fleeing before his response can be voiced. Concurrently, Youngju takes decisive steps to terminate his feigned romantic entanglement with Soyoung, her ensuing distress veiled beneath a facade of acceptance. The ensuing day finds Jiwon wrestling with misconceptions regarding Kijun's sentiments, prompting her to adopt a stance of deliberate avoidance. However, a chance encounter ensues, precipitating a confrontation regarding her previous confession, only to be dismissed as jest by Jiwon. Meanwhile, news of Soyoung and Youngju's faux dissolution reverberates through the school, concealing her internal turmoil beneath a veneer of composure. Later, during a classroom session, Mr. Lee extends an invitation for students to present socially beneficial innovations, witnessing Jiwon and Kijun's disparate endeavors. While Jiwon's proposal meets with lukewarm reception, Kijun's impromptu concept garners unexpected acclaim, signaling a shift in academic fortunes. In the ensuing aftermath, Youngju extends a consolatory gesture to Jiwon, still reeling from her presentation's tepid reception, expressing his willingness to collaborate on her idea. Propelled by newfound optimism, Jiwon extends an invitation to her abode for collaborative endeavors, wherein an abundance of wood heralds the commencement of their collaborative endeavor. However, Kijun's subsequent arrival fosters a sense of disquiet. leading Jiwon to broach the topic of their collaboration, albeit met with reassurances of platonic intent from Kijun. The subsequent evening witnesses Jiwon and Youngju engrossed in project endeavors at school, culminating in a revelatory confession from Youngju regarding his feelings for Jiwon, inadvertently witnessed by a distraught Kijun. Meanwhile, Jiwon is left speechless in the wake of Youngju's revelation as she grapples with the newfound complexity of their relationship dynamics, as uncertainty pervades Kijun's thoughts. Exacerbated by his grandfather's persistent references to Jiwon, a burgeoning sense of unease consumes him. Subsequent interactions find Jiwon confronting Kijun regarding his absence from their collaborative project, eliciting a sarcastic retort from Kijun, concealing his inner turmoil. However, Jiwon's revelation of their completed project submission offers a semblance of closure amidst inclement weather. Meanwhile, a chance encounter during a class session finds Soyoung besieged by unwanted advances, precipitating a protective intervention from Youngju, emblematic of his underlying affections. The next day, in front of everyone, Youngju approaches Jiwon for a private conversation. They walk alone, and he inquires about her decision. Jiwon confesses a crush on someone else despite Youngju being kind. She admits her lingering feelings despite his lack of interest. Understanding, Youngju pledges to respect her wishes. Later, the director of a prominent company arrives to observe a speaker demonstration. Impressed, he shows enthusiasm for their project. The students pitch their product to elderly individuals with hearing impairments. During a conversation with Kijun on the way home, Youngju remains tight-lipped about his talk with Jiwon. He advises Kijun to be forthright about his emotions. At work, Kijun ponders his feelings for Jiwon and consults his boss. His boss suggests a visualization exercise, leading Kijun to contemplate Jiwon and Youngju's hypothetical relationship, causing distress. The next morning, Kijun notices Jiwon heading to school early and rushes to join her. At school, he boldly declares his feelings for her, proposing they date secretly, which she gladly accepts. That evening, the couple's restaurant date feels awkward, prompting them to return home. Over dinner, they discuss the nuances of their new relationship. The following day, Director Go attempts to manipulate Soyoung into testifying against Youngju. Soyoung refuses, prompting Youngju's attempts at friendship, which she rebuffs. While Jiwon is at work, Youngju invites her for a meal, but she declines. Kijun arrives afterward, and they walk home hand in hand, encountering classmates, making Jiwon anxious. Later, Kijun shares news of their relationship with Youngju, who surprises them with congratulations. The next day at school, rumors about Jiwon and Kijun spread. Kijun publicly affirms their relationship, leading to cheers from classmates. Later, Jiwon witnesses an elderly woman in danger and proposes a bench project for roadside waiting areas, impressing Mr. Lee. In another scene, Youngju assists Min's mother in relocating and receives a medal to pass on to Kijun. Moved by Min's mother's story, Youngju reconciles with Kijun, apologizing for misunderstanding him. Later, Soyoung encounters Youngju at a bus stop, where he reveals plans to volunteer at her orphanage. Days later, Jiwon's team completes the bench project, but it collapses during use. An irate man threatens to complain, but Mr. Lee diffuses the situation with an apology. Mr. Lee examines the bench and finds issues with the wood and screws. Despite the setback, he encourages Jiwon to try again. That evening, Jiwon sits on the rooftop, feeling down. Kijun offers to join her, but she prefers solitude. Grandpa arrives. Knowing everything from Kijun, Jiwon expresses self-doubt, but Grandpa reassures her. The next day, Youngju volunteers at the orphanage. The director recognizes him as Soyoung's ex and warmly welcomes him. They bond over stories of Soyoung. Before leaving, Youngju gives the director encouraging bookmarks. Meanwhile, Kijun tries to uplift Jiwon by watching movies and eating. Their moment is interrupted when Jiwon's dad arrives to fix the sink. After a comedic hide and seek, they share a laugh. However, their joy turns to sorrow when Kijun's grandfather passes away. Jiwon supports Kijun during the funeral arrangements. Later, Youngju joins Kijun at the funeral home. They reminisce about Kijun's grandfather. The next day, Kijun mourns at home, skipping school. At school, Soyoung confides in Mr. Lee about Director Go's threat. She worries about her future with Youngju. Mr. Lee advises her to follow her heart. At Youngju's home, his family discusses Jong's trial. Despite pressure, Youngju insists on justice. Youngju offers support to Kijun during his grief, but Kijun pushes him away. Youngju persists in caring for Kijun. He cooks and helps with daily routines. Later, he urges Soyoung to testify truthfully, regardless of consequences. Soyoung confronts Director Go, exposing nepotism. This angers Director Go. Jong's trial ends with Mr. Lee's testimony, leading to victory. However, Mr. Lee is fired upon his return, sparking a student protest. Director Go's niece challenges her aunt's actions. She reveals the truth about Mr. Lee's resignation. Jiwon leads a protest, joined by unexpected allies. Mr. Lee stands with his students. Director Go's niece informs Soyoung and Youngju about hidden documents. Youngju plans to break into Director Go's office. Meanwhile, Kijun encourages Jiwon to try carpentry again. Soyoung alerts Kijun about Youngju's plan, and he intervenes just in time, preventing disaster. The following morning, students notice a police car at school and learn that Director Go's office was broken into. Director Go is frantic, demanding the culprit and her missing notebook be found. A teacher questions Kijun about his presence at school the previous night. Flashbacks show a mysterious person stealing a notebook from Director Go's office. Kijun, speechless, is defended by his friends, but the police still take him for questioning. The police show Kijun a video of him entering the school, but he insists he was there for schoolwork. Director Go claims nothing was stolen, but secretly worries about the notebook, which contains evidence of her corruption. She accuses Kijun of working for Mr. Lee and demands the notebook back, threatening to expel him and Youngju if it's not returned. Youngju defends Kijun, leading to a confrontation. The boys share the situation with friends Jiwon and Soyoung and decide to expose Director Go. They contact a reporter to share their story. Meanwhile, a school board member, Shin, learns from the principal about Director Go's corruption. The principal, having stolen the notebook, blackmails Shin, who agrees to remove his aunt from her position. Kijun receives a call from his estranged mother, but doesn't respond. The next day, the group finds their article hasn't been published due to external pressure. Director Go, feeling secure, prepares for a parent-teacher meeting, but a live stream exposes her corruption, leading to her immediate dismissal. Shin reveals the principal's role in the scandal and fires Director Go. In a public meeting the next day, students anticipate the announcement of a new director. Shin shocks everyone by revealing extensive corruption and announcing the school's permanent closure. The unexpected news shocks both teachers and students, leaving Kijun and Jiwon worried about their school's future. Jiwon regrets their actions and wishes they had stayed silent. Kijun's mother arrives from Canada, urging him to move with her, but he hesitates due to Jiwon. His mother is concerned but respects his decision. The next day, a petition against the school's closure gains support, but seems ineffective. Desperate, Kijun's mom asks Jiwon to convince Kijun to go to Canada. Jiwon, hiding her devastation, advises him to leave and assures him they can maintain a long-distance relationship. Kijun is convinced and agrees to go. Meanwhile, Youngju confesses his feelings to Soyoung, who declines, prioritizing her studies. Shin's father wakes from a coma, overturns the school's closure decision after seeing the petition, and thanks the students for fighting corruption. Soyoung later spends time with Youngju, hinting at mutual feelings. Kijun prepares to leave, sharing a heartfelt goodbye with Jiwon, who gives him a parting gift. On the bus, he opens the gift, a carved heart with a message of love and support. Overwhelmed, he decides to stay and reunites with Jiwon. Months later, Jiwon gets a job offer requiring her to move, and she and Kijun decide to maintain a long-distance relationship. Soyoung gets into a top university, and Youngju finally confesses his feelings, which Soyoung reciprocates. The story concludes on graduation day with everyone celebrating their last day of high school together.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed these heartwarming love stories as much as we enjoyed sharing them with you. If you have any suggestions about such love stories you'd like us to feature, please leave a comment below. We love hearing from you. Your feedback helps us create even more engaging content. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends and family who could use a little extra love in their day. And make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our next tale of love, romance, and heartfelt moments. Until next time, stay inspired, keep spreading the love, and remember, your story could be the next one we tell. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.